completely decode the massive historical and geographic forces that are actively driving today's complex global power dynamics. If you just glance at the headlines right now, it's so easy to feel like the world is uniquely chaotic, like unprecedented, right? But to truly understand our modern world, we have to recognize that we're actually standing at a literal crossroads. It's a place where the ghosts of the past are actively, and I mean literally actively, dictating the conflicts of the present. Let's dive in. We're kicking things off with a pretty profound thought directly from our source text. The clock face of the century does not move in steady, predictable ticks. It leaps forward in violent spasms, pausing only long enough for empires to mistake the silence for stability. Wow, right? Basically, right now we're living in this deceptive pause. The tectonic plates of global power are shifting right under our feet, and what feels like stability to us is often just the calm before a major historical leap. To make sense of all this, our agenda today covers 5 key pillars. First, the crossroads of history. Second, why civilizations rise and fall. Third, geography as global destiny. Fourth, the birth of globalization. And finally, religion, identity, and power. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the crossroads of history, where we look at history as a live current. So the modern conflicts we see today, they aren't new. They're actually just new chapters in a massive ongoing struggle. The past literally built the scaffolding. I mean, the lines drawn in the sand by ancient empires are the exact same trenches being dug today. The present is totally defined by friction, basically retrofitting those ancient rivalries with 21st century weaponry. And the future? Well, it hangs in this incredibly delicate multipolar balance. The big question for us is no longer if the global order will change, but how it's going to transition. Moving right along to section 2, why civilizations rise and fall, focusing on the life cycle of empires. Okay, a really crucial element of a civilization's success is this concept called asabiya. It's an early academic concept proposed by the historical thinker Ibn Khaldun, and it essentially describes the deep social cohesion that binds a society together. You see, military strength all by itself, that doesn't create enduring civilization. Ideas actually matter. The strongest civilizations possess shared beliefs, common values, and a united national purpose that drives them to gain power. Khaldun observed this really strict life cycle across tons of empires. It almost always starts with unity, which then leads to power. Naturally, that power generates immense wealth. But here's the trap. Wealth eventually breeds luxury. And as that luxury spreads, that vital social cohesion we just talked about, that asabiya, starts to weaken. Corruption creeps in, the elites become totally detached, and inevitably, the decline begins. It's this fascinating, recurring pattern that completely transcends both geography and time. Which brings us to section 3, geography as global destiny. We're looking at the inescapable reality of our physical world. Early civilizations didn't just pop up out of nowhere. They practically clung to river basins like the Tigris and Euphrates. And why is that? Well, because the absolute strongest predictor of civilizational success is hands down geography. These rivers provided a massive agricultural surplus. I mean, without basic food security, large civilizations literally just cannot survive. Think of rivers as the literal arteries of power. Take the Indus Valley, for example. The river there provided the agricultural surplus needed to finally free everyday citizens from the constant daily struggle of just trying to survive. And once they had that freedom, they started building incredible complex cities, developing specialized professions, and creating some seriously massive infrastructure. It was a total game changer. The vast Yellow River in China further proves this exact point. Basically, controlling these major waterways meant controlling the wealth, the trade, and ultimately political dominance. The agricultural output here was so immense, it supported millions of people back in ancient times. Interestingly, it earned the dual title of both the cradle of Chinese civilization and China's sorrow, mostly because of its devastating and super unpredictable floods. But the takeaway here is that when societies produce more food than they immediately need, that is when knowledge and complex institutions can actually develop. Rivers are where that whole shebang started. Now, this intense focus on geography actually sparked some dueling academic theories on global power. On one hand, you have Halford Mackinder's heartland theory, which argues that whoever rules the interior of Eurasia basically commands the world. But on the flip side, Nicholas Spikeman's rimland theory argues that no, it's actually the coastal regions surrounding Eurasia that are the real key to power. It's absolutely fascinating to see how these two competing theories still perfectly frame exactly how modern superpowers strategize today, without us having to take sides on which one is right. Fast forward to today, and this geographical struggle is hyper-focused on what we call strategic choke points. These are those narrow little waterways where controlling them can completely dictate global commerce and energy security. To put it in perspective, a massive portion of the entire world's oil passes right through the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, places like the Strait of Malacca, the Suez Canal, and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait act as the world's most critical bottlenecks for commerce. So yeah, geography still dictates exactly where all the global leverage is located. Let's transition into section 4, the birth of globalization, exploring the world's ancient trade routes. Long before things like the internet or overnight air cargo, we had these vast overland networks, like the famous Silk Road, connecting distant civilizations. And it actually wasn't just one single road. It was this massive sprawling network connecting China, Central Asia, Persia, Arabia, and Europe. And they didn't just spread wealth and spices. They spread major religions like Buddhism and Islam, groundbreaking technologies like paper and gunpowder, and, well, even diseases like the Black Death. But as global trade evolved, a massive shift happened, moving from the land to the sea. The expansive maritime Silk Road spanned across the Indian Ocean, and eventually these sea routes became every bit as important as the land routes, seamlessly connecting Africa, Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. By relying on seasonal monsoon winds, ships like the traditional dhow made these maritime routes significantly safer and way cheaper than hauling goods overland. For centuries, the Indian Ocean served as the true beating heart of global commerce. This was all driven by the incredible value of goods like textiles, gold, and spices, which, fun fact, in ancient times were sometimes literally worth their weight in gold. No way, right? So when we look at it side by side, while our tools have drastically changed, I mean, we've gone from camel caravans to massive container ships, and from handwritten letters to the high-speed internet, the foundational principles of human exchange remain completely identical. Ancient globalization basically drew up the interconnected blueprint that our entire modern global economy is built upon today. And that brings us to our final section, section 5, religion, identity, and power, focusing on the ultimate unifying force. Historically speaking, religion was entirely inseparable from politics. It answered the fundamental questions of life and provided the moral codes, the legal principles, and the educational systems of the day. But perhaps most importantly, it provided that deep social cohesion and collective identity necessary for empires to actually legitimize their rule. It gave everyday people a shared identity that connected them through common beliefs. And, as we learned a bit earlier with asabiya, that shared belief system is absolutely vital for any civilization to endure. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope this helps you look at world events with a bit more clarity. We know the scaffolding was built by the past. We know that geography is destiny, for sure. And we know that social cohesion determines the very life cycle of power. Understanding this historical blueprint leaves us with one incredibly vital question to ponder. As our global order transitions today, will this shift toward a multipolar world happen peacefully through diplomatic realignment, or will it be baptized in the fires of conflict?